Welcome back to the morning show edition of The Light. This is Raymond Tyler, and I'm here with Angela Taylor. We're just talking, easy for me to say, right? We are discussing kids of the incarcerated. Uh, Ms. Taylor has come up with a program to help the community, educators, and everyone uh, do better in helping kids or young people who have parents that have been incarcerated. And her parents were incarcerated during her youth as well. So I'd like to ask you, what can you tell our listeners about how you were able to achieve during your time with were both of your parents incarcerated at the same time?
Um, yes and no, but at a point I didn't know who my father was, so he wasn't in the picture.
Okay.
So bottom line, meaning there was no one to take me. So when my mother was pregnant with me, it was apparent that when she after that I would be born in prison while she was still locked up. So
Okay.
when I went straight into foster care as a baby because there was no one to take me. So over the years up till I was about 8, I was in and out of different foster homes and group homes, and then my mother had gotten together with Lindsay. So I talk about different people in my book as the people who really had a great influence on my life. Lindsay, who I called my stepfather, I referred to him as my father, was not my biological father. My biological father had a candy store in Harlem. But my Lindsay had come from Chicago, and he took care of my sister and I because my mother did not stay out of prison for long. She got us out the home, put us in, set us up and got locked right back up. My mother was bipolar and she was
Okay.
self-medicating with heroin at the time.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so we witnessed a lot. And that's the other thing, when young people who, we got to understand that most of the people incarcerated have either some kind of a mental and or learning disability. um they're different struggles that have become generational, right? So I focus on the kids of the incarcerated because that's what I am. That's my testimony, right? So
Right.
I when you say, how, I always will say, I had a very strong faith in God as a young child, right?
Right.
um and I and although that went to the wayside, but by my teenage years, I had so much anger and resentment pent up inside of me. Although I was um I was a high achiever in school.
Mm.
I took to education. I still love learning, right? So that was my saving grace. That, I guess, was the gift that God put in me to use to propel myself to a place where I could then turn around, use my story to let people know that no matter where you start, you don't know where you're going to end up, right? Nobody can write your story for you.
Right.
So, so yes, I tell my story because it's become very freeing. For many years, I tucked it down, and when I was in high school, I talk about the fact that I was part of one of the biggest gangs in New York, the Decepticons at the time, and my part in that, as I was a trained fighter growing up, and my father had me in all kind of Lindsay, had me in all kind of martial arts, boxing, and etc.
Right.
So I was a different kind of girl, especially in that era, right? We see a lot more girls who were, into sports. In fact, we didn't have all of that, but that was, where I shined or whatever.
Right,
So whenever someone and my temper was very short. So when, someone would take a look at me and, sometimes people think they can judge you based on what you look like,
right.
and that's just not the case. So I understand why a lot of our young people are so angry. And up to that point, I have been in so many different places that I just I went into a very dark place for a few years.
How did you
Um
come? I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah,
I
no, go
was
ahead.
going to ask, uh, how did you come out?
My father died. I know that was a big wake up.
Lindsay or
Lindsay. Well,
okay,
my Lindsay, I found out later my biological father, who my biological father actually was, and he actually died when I was in college. I
okay,
didn't know that at the time. I was going into my junior year of high school, and Lindsay had died.
okay,
So, Lindsay had always put in my head, you're going to college, you're going, nobody else I even knew went to college. So at first I was like, I don't know. I knew I was always good in school. That's all I knew. But
right,
I also started to understand that it took money, and I knew we had no money. You know what I mean?
right,
I didn't know about financial aid. That's another thing. Like, I put that in the companion book, has like resources, like when you have a first generation college student, how they can find, uh, scholarships and financial aid and other things that can help them go to college, because that was one of the things that I really, for a long, I didn't believe I could go to college, and I didn't think it mattered how smart I was, because I knew people smarter than me that couldn't graduate high school because they kept getting into fights. You know what I mean?
right.
So for me, that was a disconnect, and I don't think a lot of people understand that if they're not in that life, you know.
Okay, if you're just tuning in, this is the Light Morning Show. We're here with Angela Taylor from Kids of the Incarcerated, which is her program to help educators in the community better better relate and help young people who have parents who are or have been incarcerated. We're going to take one more break, but I'm going to have to do some rapid fire questions to get everything we want in. But I also want to let you know that, you're welcome to stop by and be a guest anytime. Before we go to break, can you give out the website again one more time, please?
www.findinghealingbook.com.
All right, and we'll be back with more of the light right after this.